Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7 tenths remaining. Conley now with 3. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Jamorant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On Tuesday, there's a little bit of breaking news about our Memphis Grizzlies. The Athletics' Shams Charania let out a tweet that shook up Twitter a little bit by saying the Grizzlies would not offer Dillon Brooks, who is an unrestricted free agent, a contract under any circumstances. So apparently, the Dillon Brooks era in Memphis is over. I know a lot of Grizzlies fans have wanted Dillon Brooks gone for a while. Dillon Brooks, like I've been spelling out on this podcast, was terrible in the playoffs. You didn't need this podcast to tell you that. You watched him. He was bad in the Lakers series. He also made headlines and drew negative attention to the team. And you could argue he's now drawn negative attention to the team for 2 consecutive playoffs. He made the Grizzlies a bad guy last year against the Warriors with the flagrant 2 foul against Gary Payton 2. And then at that point, it wasn't exactly that point, but the Grizzlies started becoming, more of a villainous team. Dillon himself has kind of resisted the idea that the villain identity was something that he chose or wanted or even leaned into, but the Grizzlies got less popular, at least as far as less overall beloved over the past year. I mean, other players did it too. Jamorant made a huge impact on how the Grizzlies are perceived nationally. There's all the talk about, trash talk. So much of it is, honestly, it feels like the creation of just the 24/7 sports media, just making up something to talk about. But Dillon Brooks had his hand in becoming a disliked NBA player just by himself, and that affected how the Grizzlies were perceived. And after last year's playoffs, where he shot the Grizzlies out of Game 4, and in Game 6, he was valiant, but still eventually ended up missing 17 shots in that game despite scoring a lot of points. And coming out of the Warriors loss, Warriors players themselves were like, Dillon Brooks is the reason why you're not any good. Draymond this year said, the Grizzlies dynasty starts after Dillon Brooks leaves. And then you had interactions with Dillon this year, and Dillon struggled this season. He had a subpar year. He shot under 40% overall from the field this season. That's the first time he's done that in his entire career. He did, in fact, accept a lesser role, but it turns out maybe he wasn't happy about that lesser role. Now, I've spelled out many times that when the Grizzlies were at full strength, Dillon Brooks didn't shoot the ball as much, and that's all we ever asked for. We asked for Dillon Brooks, hey, just play defense, just shoot 3-pointers, don't play hero ball, don't take bad shots, just be a defender. Well, apparently Dillon's not into that. And even while doing that, his play in the postseason, I think, was bad enough, combined with him calling out LeBron James, with him also getting ejected from a game again. I mean, also, he led the league in technical fouls. This is years after, going a couple straight seasons leading the entire NBA in personal fouls. So Dillon's on-court play, I think, crossed a threshold when you combined it with the negative attention he was bringing the team. And I think we can now guess or infer the negative impact he was having on the locker room. What is coming clear to me, and maybe it was obvious to everyone already, is that Dillon was not okay with his role on the Grizzlies. This 3-and-D role, this lower usage, like his usage in February and March was basically career lows. under 20% usage. Well, he said at his end-of-year media availability that, like, he kept talking about, hey, it's a new role for me. It's a new role for me. I'm just a 3-and-D guy. They don't want me to take shots. He's saying I'm in a different role. He was pointing out how maybe they should run him some plays to get him going. He was saying he could do more than they're asking him to do, but they weren't asking him to do it. Now that we understand that, all right, they're moving on and this relationship is apparently over, according to Shams Charania, you go back and look at old quotes. Drew Hill pulled one out where Drew had asked Dillon if he was nervous about the playoffs, going into the playoffs. And he said, there's no pressure on me. I'm in a different role. I'm a 3-and-D guy. They need me to do more, I can. I didn't make anything of that quote at the time. I just thought it was, confident Dillon being like, oh, no, there's no pressure on me. But now I think it's just, is this passive aggressive? Him just continuing to mention, like, I've got a new role. You're not happy with how I'm playing? Well, you gave me a new role. This isn't the role I'm good at. This is not the role I prefer. So for whatever the reason, this accumulation of all these things, of all the years of inefficient shooting, and I mean, they were lots of years of inefficient shooting. You know me, like, I was very anti-Dillon Brooks 4 years ago, where I'm like, why in the world are we sticking with this guy? And then he won me over. I'm like, listen, that guy defends everybody. And he's still a great defender. He is going to receive, I mean, the ballots have already been cast. He has received all defensive team votes this year. In the postseason, the last few seasons, he's guarded and done an okay job guarding. He's guarded LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Karl Anthony Towns and DeMar DeRozan. He's had to face up with these guys. Basically can guard 1 through 4, and he does it, and he's usually the Grizzlies' best option to do so. But what he's bringing you on the other side of the ball has gotten, I guess, bad enough that they decided they had to move on. Although, honestly, I think it's just the lack of accepting that that's the role they want for him. And they said, all right, we're done no matter what. I'm conflicted. I did think, based on the Lakers series, the on-court and off-court stuff, where I was like, you got to move. You got to do something else. Part of that is they never showed an interest or, I don't know, the bravery to move him into a different role, to like bench him, to have him come off the bench. They started him constantly. But where I'm conflicted is the Grizzlies can't clearly replace him with someone not on the roster. They're going to be over the salary cap. They're basically losing him for nothing. Now, they still could sign and trade him. But to sign and trade him, you got to find someone else who wants him. And the way this has played out, this, we're done with him no matter what, or not interested in any circumstances, it's basically continuing to destroy the value, the perceived value of Dillon Brooks. I mean, we know he nuked his value in the postseason. We talked all year how, hey, he's not going to sign his extension because he's going to make more than that. He's an all defensive level forward starting for a perennial 2 seed. Starters in the NBA, they make about $20 million a year. He's not going to accept 4 years, 65 or whatever the maximum extension was going to be. And apparently the Grizzlies offered him this extension and he passed it up. Little did we know he would destroy all value in the postseason, and now he's not going to get that. He's not going to get it from the Grizzlies. That offer's off the table. Will someone in free agency give him that? It seems very debatable. Like, the argument against his bad shooting numbers was basically pointing to the scoreboard, saying we're winning. I'm part of winning culture. You could also point to net rating, on-off swings, all the lineup data. The Grizzlies dominate when I'm on the court. All the 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, 5-man lineup data for the Grizzlies, it was basically always great with Dillon Brooks. This year took a little bit of a dip because it was absurdly good the previous 2 seasons. But if the team you have been winning with says, you know what? all the baggage he brings, it's not really worth it. We're done with him. Well, then I don't know how other teams are going to look at him and be like, oh yeah, bring him in. If he's too toxic for this team that's been winning games with him to keep around, why would we pay him much? That, by the way, also makes me think that it's not the Grizzlies who leaked this information, or not purposely leaked this information, but I don't know. I don't know how it's good for Dillon Brooks either. Like Dillon Brooks, it's hard to rank him among like all-time Grizzlies. He's always been divisive, but he's been here for 6 full seasons. He started 318 regular season games, started 22 playoff games. He's been involved in the 10th most wins, regular season and postseason combined, in franchise history. He's 12th in regular season games played. His all-time franchise ranks are impressive. 9th in franchise history in points, 10th in steals, 15th in assists, 3rd in three-pointers made. His playoff ranks also good. 8th in playoff points, 3rd in playoff three-pointers made, 8th in playoff assists, 10th in playoff steals. I mean, he was a great draft story. They took him in the 2nd round, and he turned out to be like a good pro. But now he's just destroyed all that goodwill, it seems like. He's lost the defenders like me who were won over, and I'm like, you know what? This guy wins. I can take it. But the tricky part is, again, with the Grizzlies getting rid of him, who do you replace him with? As bad as he was against the Lakers, he still shot a better field goal percentage than David Roddy did, than Tyus Jones did, than Zaire Williams did. Although, to be fair, Zaire only played garbage time. Like, you got to assume right now the Grizzlies' depth chart, it's David Roddy. David Roddy's starting small forward. I know they want to make moves. But if they're moving on from Dillon Brooks, they have 14 guys under contract for next year, and then they're going to draft somebody, we think, with the 25th pick. Your presumed starters now for next season, Jamorant, Desmond Bane, I'm going to say David Roddy, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, assuming he gets healthy. Your second unit, Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard. Who's the 3? I don't know. Zaire Williams? Concha, or LaRavia? Let's say Zaire. Second unit, Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, Zaire Williams, Santi Aldama, Xavier Tillman. Then the rest of your roster, John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Brandon Clark as he rehabs from the Achilles injury, and then whoever you draft with the 25th pick. Like, this continues the theme of the episode I released on Monday, thinking about how all the assets we had a year ago, they look worse now. Like I said, yeah, Dillon killed his value. Well, now apparently Dillon's gone. Like a year ago, if you're doing trade value rankings on the Grizzlies, you know, Dillon's like top 5, top 10. Zaire Williams had trade value. Melton had trade value. Your 21st and 29th picks in last year's draft had trade value. Now, so many of those have gone away. Again, like, I'm okay with them turning the page. They had to turn the page, apparently. I support that. But now, like, this puts to test the we'll take anything over Dillon. The people who are like, he's so inefficient that just any old player, you'd be better having him in the game. I don't think that's true. I don't think the Grizzlies would be better with, you know, Conchar in the game, or Roddy in the game, or Zaire in the game. I mean, maybe they would be next year. Maybe those guys can all do their off-season leaps or whatever, but I don't depend on that. It's a weird spot the Grizzlies got put into. It definitely makes, I think, everyone have a lot of regret over past decisions. To be like, this is who we hooked our wagon to. Now he's moving on, and the Grizzlies, you know, they have questions. I mean, you have Ja, you have Jaren, you have Desmond. Beyond that, big question marks for the Grizzlies. And now with this news of Dillon Brooks moving on, or the team moving on from Dillon, maybe is a more accurate way to put it, It's a blank canvas. Exhilarating and scary, I guess. What will the Grizzlies do from here? How will they find someone, to step in and be a starter so they don't take a step back next season? That's the huge question. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for listening to this emergency Dillon Brooks episode. Never forget, Dillon averaged over 25 points per game in his first playoff series. He had the 28th most points ever through his first 5 playoff games among all NBA players. Since then, he's been hovering right around 33% on his field goal attempts in the postseason. Catch you later, Dillon Brooks. You were great for content. Good luck in the next stop. It'll be very interesting to see what he looks like in another situation. Maybe with a team that gives him less leeway, or maybe it'll be a team that gives him more leeway. What'll that look like? Anyways, appreciate you guys listening as always. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.